So here we are in after 1 year of the war, back in August 1915 now, and things have actually stabilized in some ways similar to how they did historically. But it feels like it's for the wrong reasons. I'm trying very hard to grasp a way to explain what's going on. The initial part of the game, that incredibly volatile conflict, I don't know. It could have gone many different ways, right? But I think in general, the attacker is eventually going to get flung back in a harsh manner if they're making risky attacks. And there's no way you're going to get the kind of gains that historically were obtained without making a lot of risky attacks. Which means that something like what we had, which was basically, until the invasion of the Netherlands by the Entente, which was basically the starting lines didn't change, is not that unlikely. And we've seen that, but things have kind of gelled a little bit, although the invasion of the Netherlands did open up more room for the larger total force pools that the Entente can put in the field to allow them to get little advantages here and there, especially with how sloppy I'm playing. That's getting stretched further with the introduction of the Italians coming into the war. The advances I was hoping to make with the Central Powers in the East Front, yeah, they're not panning out either. That's a dense enough defense that, again, it's really hard to reach those 3-to-1 odds that you absolutely need to still have a risky attack, but one that, is more likely to succeed than not, and isn't likely to send you fleeing back with all your units. Now, there is some possibility, and I'm looking into this idea, considering it, of the Brits are thinking, I talked about this at the end of the last video, they're thinking about starting to do some attritional attacks that'll be piecemeal hits on the units in this stack. They can't get a 3-to-1 against the stack, but they may be able to get like 2 3-to-1s and a 2-to-1. I've kind of given up on that because it doesn't gain you ground. But it also doesn't end up with all your stacks fleeing back. However, you have to be really careful because you have to position the individual units and make decisions as to which ones are actually attacking in which situation. Because what you want to make sure you don't do is like lose a hex because all the units in that hex are making the 2-to-1 attack or something along those lines. So it's such a painful process that it has to really shine as the thing you want to do. And it's beginning to feel that way simply because the British RPs are going to waste on too many terms. That's why no submarine warfare is being done. I'm allowing an option where the Germans don't have to conduct it. Because the Brits are just not in the fighting. They tried to open up another front. Well, they can't do anything there, and they're blocked in. But it does pull more German troops off the line. And you can see the Central Powers is not even covering their sort of East Front center. Is it an opportunity for the Russians? I don't know. These single points are pretty strong. The Russians can't really attack them. And if they advance, they'll give up the natural defense line that they fell back to and all kind of stuff like that. So they've pretty much accepted allowing the Central Powers to get away with less of a defense than maybe they should be able to. And the Russians can't get away with the similar because the CP could just slide into a more offensive position and shift forces and try to crack in the center instead of what they're doing, which is oozing around in East Prussia. They're not gaining much in Galicia. They're badly threatened here. The most bothersome historical situation is Serbia. If you read the rules as written, minor countries don't produce unless they're somehow hooked up with like a supply source. Because Serbia, for example, only has Belgrade. You have to connect 3 major cities to be in supply and therefore get replacement points. Serbia did not do that. Yet they did keep fielding their army, even well before Salonika landings happened and established them with a reasonable supply source. But yeah, and I mean, I guess London on its own counts as supplier, as being in supply or something. Again, I'm not even sure the Brits are legally allowed to build units there unless they are actually declaring sea supply from France or something like that. But I feel like there's some things that have to be better clarified in the rules. After Serbia's fall, I've allowed Montenegro to continue on in the war, even though and produce RPs and stuff, just because it just doesn't feel right that like these miners are completely locked out of any capacity to build their forces. Maybe that rule is only meant to be for major powers, but again, it's not specified as such. Maybe limited supply counts, but if that's the case, then that rule doesn't have any effect at all. And so, like, you can produce anywhere. You don't need to link up cities. So it's all kind of there's some definite like messy stuff that I feel like needs clarification or interpretation by the player. Because I think Serbia probably should have been continuing to produce units. The result wouldn't be too different though, because again, that volatile combat. If you can get to that 3-1, and it's possible for the Austrians to do that, and they basically did, you can basically chip away at the enemy and just cut them to nothing. So, I mean, if you can keep getting at that 3-1, knock out some units, make another attack against other units later, whatever, you're gonna eventually wear something down. So Serbia becomes actually a really easily solved problem by just putting enough troops in there, which most other games I have not seen Serbia fall even when you put them under heavy pressure. It's something I always want to do because I just want to clear that out so that I can focus my Austrians against Russia and then eventually cover Italy as well. Austria is not able to do a hell of a lot now, although they've gotten some gains here with German support and whatnot. And they pushed the Russians back into the Carpathians. Or is it Carpathians? I don't remember. Anyway, that's sort of where we're sitting right now. We'll get some more play in when I have the will to do it. I came up here to do the Central Powers turn in August of 15. And I had the wrong pieces set here. I don't know what happened. I'd jumped from, it should actually not be August anyway. August, September, October. For whatever reason, I jumped down here to, I think, the October 16 turn. But I'm running into but one thing I noticed is, I got a half year I got to populate, so I'm going to do that instead of playing an actual turn. But we're in kind of a tricky point here, where the Germans are going to have to start withdrawing their 684 units, which means I want to start taking them as losses and not rebuilding them, which is a shame. They're my good units. Until I get my Strasstruppen, they're all I have that are that good. But if they're in the replacement pool, I remove them without like losing stuff. If they're on the board, they just go away. I don't get, if I recall correctly, I don't get like another weaker unit in their place or anything like that. So that kind of blows, to tell you the truth. Let me make sure of that. Complete loss. You get RPs equal to their strength, which means you'll be able to bring more units in. But it's still to your advantage not to have to ship units back and forth. Like, these units will just be removed from the board, and they will give you RPs. You got to build new units with them and get them to the front. And in general, it's going to be better if I take the losses. So it wasn't as bad as I feared, though. Anyway, going to fill out up through July of 16, I guess. Because like the combat results table, there's so much like differentiation between how units end up. So some units are just reinforcements, fine, they're paid for, they already exist, maybe you're getting shipped back in or are already paid for and being mobilized or whatever. Fine. You know, although I'd have to say that replacing dying units like could end up getting in the way of the reinforcements or something like that, because it's the same manpower pool and everything. It just feels a little weird to have reinforcements and replacements both in the game. In a few cases, reinforcements really make sense, like for colonial troops and such not being called back. I think it feels a lot less reasonable for units that I guess their price was paid at some other time, but normally you pay right on the turn you place them on the board. So, you know, just give me some additional replacement points or something like that. I don't know. That's not the big deal. The bigger thing that really upsets me is some of the other things. So, in particular, the difference between withdrawing units and replacing units with weaker ones. It just feels like, I don't know, some countries like Germany have units being withdrawn, which means that they have to basically reform weaker units behind the lines, whereas other countries like Russia, and I guess this is meant more to represent desertions and whatnot that were happening, are actually just getting reduced, and the Brits are too. And then there's like reduced, but only once they're destroyed, you know, which is really hard to remember. I haven't faced that yet, I don't think, but I got a couple of good British units that if once they die, they go away, and it's going to be hard to remember that flow. And let's see what else. The withdrawal, the replacement. There's also the, oh yeah, you just have to pay one artillery to get this. But it's a reinforcement, and it's like, I'm just keeping track of so many different flavors of stuff coming into the game. It really feels almost like there was no desire to try to make this easy. Which, you know, in a game that was really, really detailed and captured other subsystems really well, like a Le Grand Caire, I could see the argument for it. It's a lot harder here. It's a lot harder here. Because this is just like so abstracted, and the only way you can justify the combat and the way it works is with a lot of hand waving. And it simply doesn't really seem to make sense for the early part of the war, although, I don't know, maybe you can make an argument that, like, yeah, the French could have stopped Schlieffen and just repulsed it completely and plowed into Belgium or something along those lines, you know. I don't know. I haven't seen anything that would lead me to believe that that German army could be flung back as easily as it was. And to be honest, any army trying to attack to gain ground, like really trying to gain ground, that can't reach those almost impossible 3-to-1 odds, is gonna face that. Like, because if you're splitting up your attacks, you're not trying to gain ground. You might make it. We'll see if that works for attrition. But anyway, I don't know what I'm doing now. Sleep. It's that weird time around 6 in the morning where I'm like, I got some sleep and I got to do something today. Do I stay up, make a real breakfast? I had some peanut butter crackers, but have a real breakfast, or and maybe make some coffee and try to go out early in the day, or do I try to catch some more sleep? Haven't decided yet, but I can squeeze in another turn. I'm too awake to really try to sleep again right away. So we were gonna do the Central Power side of things. We're over here. I think we've already looked at the counters and whatnot. Nobody's getting new counters, but we haven't even done the reinforcement phase for them yet. You can use the partial attacks for. I've got enough strength points here to get a 3-to-1 on this stack of the Russians. But what I could do is break it into 2 different attacks, one of which against the entrenched unit, one against the non-entrenched, to get a better odds on some of the units at least, and reduce some of the effects. I haven't been doing that, which is probably a mistake, but it does reduce sort of the potential damage that you can take from, again, from performing even a 3-to-1 attack. So it's probably a wise idea. It's just the complications of dealing with like splitting attacks on a stack. It's just so obnoxious that I don't want to do it ever. It's such a pain in the ass. I needed a couple more strength points to make an attack here. It would be 3-to-1, but you know. Actually, no, it would be a 2-to-1 against a clear hex, which is risky. So maybe it's fine that I didn't. But I'm like, that would help me tighten my gap and all that. Yeah, but it could also fling me back. So maybe it's best that I didn't do it. You know, it's achieving more like the mobile warfare initial disadvantage to attacking, which is that you could end up losing quite a bit of territory for it. Yeah, but I couldn't find, basically I needed another artillery piece to come in here to get it. Anyway, it's probably fine that I didn't manage it. I did shift some of my artillery away from the center, which might mean that the French now have like capabilities to hit things more in their center of the West Front. But I did find a couple of attacks on the Russian front. So that'll work. And I significantly strengthened the Italian front. But the war doesn't go the Central Powers way as it gets later and later. You know, I mean, eventually the U.S. enters, and that's a significant change. But also, I mean, Romania versus Bulgaria. I think Romania is bigger in most cases. Being able to bring Greece in changes the whole dynamics of the Balkans. Of course, the Turks can come in too, and I'm not sure how much they're able to intervene in this game. Most games they're pretty free, but I think they're limited and may not be able to go deep into the Balkans. All right, I got to swap batteries. I'll resolve those battles. The dichotomy, actually coming up and playing the game or a game or whatever, energizes me, makes it harder for me to go back to sleep. Whereas the other thing that I can kind of do at night, you know, that's at all I consider of any worth, is I can be reading, and that almost invariably puts me to sleep. Unfortunately, to do reading, I kind of have to sit out in the living room. I just can't do it in my bedroom. I don't know why. I just don't. The way the pillows are set up, I prefer being out on the bean bags. All right. Anyway, I'm just delaying. Good. I had this attack prepared. I count up my factors here. I have 44. That immediately sets some alarm bells buzzing because I should have 42. I count this. I have 15. I mean, how do I do that? You know? And it's just, I think it's the pawing through in the numbers, and I come up with a target that I need, and I put that stronger piece in, and I think I've got it. And now, I don't know, I mean, I can jiggle a unit out of here to swap in with something, I guess, because I know that neither of these stacks moved, but it's just so fucking obnoxious to miss by artillery to pull out. They don't provide all that much defense anyway, but they do provide an extra unit of stacking, which is powerful. But now I'm obviously over the 45. What I thought I was going to highlight before I did my counting was, yeah, but if I want to pick on this thing, now I've got perfect numbers to hit the hex. I've figured out, you know, say my 45. The actuality is now it's 47. So I have a couple extra strength points, which helps a little bit. But, you know, in order to hit this, I'd have to find a 21 that matches through all the hexes and everything. It doesn't cause a real problem, nor does the other attack cause a particular problem. You know, it's just obnoxious. So now I've got to figure out how to divide up my strength points so that I make those two attacks. And again, it's just this cumbersome system. And I feel like it's absolutely necessary to play the game, actually. I know that before I was saying, I've given up on the soak-offs. Yeah, but when you're able to pick off a unit and get rid of its -1 and later -2, that becomes a lot more valuable. And again, I'm 1 point off here. When counting in the 3/4 and whatnot, I don't understand how I'm getting these off by 1 errors all the time. I don't know if this one's fixable. I came up with 41, I need 42. Jiggle things around, so I got the extra point in each attack, and both were successful. The dual attack here, honestly, I got half exchanges on both, so it would have probably worked out fine. But this one was a full exchange, which is a little bit more painful. But we broke the river line. And this is the weird thing. It's like, in some cases, I'm willing to jiggle things around and fix them. It's mainly, is it easy, which means, is it on the East Front? Or is it fucking, I don't know. I went through a couple iterations here on the West Front as well, where, you know, what I found, I just reorganized and reorganized, but it didn't work out. Here I was able to work it out because it is easier. Over here, I just was not able to get the attacks that I wanted out of it. That's going to put it on the Allies, which means, yeah, I've already recovered that unit. I don't think I have anything damaged, but who the hell knows? Like, there could be a disruption marker kicking in under one of these or whatever. And it's just, the whole game is just fucking obnoxious to play. It really is. And, you know, when I say it's the worst World War I game I've played, at first it was, there are no redeeming features. Now I'm beginning to see ways in which at least the trench warfare part of the game can feel a little historical. And you could say, okay, look, if you really believed that early part of the war was as much of a coin toss as it feels like this game generated, okay, you know, if you believe the French could have knocked the Germans back across Belgium, you know, that I could see making that argument. It does seem too volatile. The one place that I really feel like it is way too was in Serbia. It just, that went over. It was like a steamroller that no one could stop, and I just don't know, you know. It does feel to me like, you know, it's way too likely to generate really serious what-if type conditions where one side or the other just gets some really bad rolls and gets flung out of any defensive line they can take. That may be what you need to make Schlieffen work. Usually, and the general historical consensus is that it was essentially impossible. You see some arguments in favor of it. What if they stuck to the plan and whatnot? Yeah, if they stuck to the plan, they'd be cut off. They had to deal with the emerging situation. But the trench warfare is kind of working. But why is it working? It's working because nobody's attacking. It's not generating the kind of bloodshed that actually happened. There's no great incentive for attacking against trenches. And what there really is a huge disincentive to any kind of attack that's less than 3-1. And 3-1 is really hard to get unless you have overwhelming superiority, not just local. It's not just a local thing. It's that, you have to have their line stripped so bare that you can get that massive superiority in a punch through. And 3-1 doesn't guarantee you anything. It just gives you a shot. It still has its dangers with the trench too. You could get flung back. I don't mind those too much. They feel less, I don't know. I mean, I still got a 10% chance. And the other attacks feel too likely to be successful. I think that's the whole thing. Like, anytime you actually are willing to roll a die, you've got a pretty good chance of taking things. I took 2 hexes. It just feels like there should be a more attritional result. And I know that's harder to represent when you're taking losses on counters and everything. Like, there should be something like a half exchange where the defender loses half their units and the attacker loses as many strength points. The actual half exchange is something complete, and something like that being sort of the commonplace would actually probably give me something that feels more normal. Now, of course, I have to look this up, make sure the defender is eliminated, the attacker has to lose at least half. Yeah, see, somewhere in there's too many things that give you ground against the fortifications. Like the DDs, they push you out. And there's too little things that don't give you ground, but give... The no decision is the closest to what I'm talking about. But, I guess I'm talking about something that's a little harsher than a no decision on both sides, right? A heavier loss on both sides, although the attacker is generally going to take the worse in the no decision. So it's the no decisions that feel like the right thing that should mostly fill the chart. And the chance of actually taking a hex should almost require some kind of, special situation or some kind of failure roll or something like that. And I don't know. It just feels like 1 in 10 for the attacker to lose a hex in this scale. Well, probably 3 hexes is just out of line with anything. Anyway, I gotta cut this because battery's done. So I turned the camera on just because I want to see, did the battery charge? It didn't. That's fine. I count on it not normally charging from this camera. But so on to the Allied side. But, life stuff. I've just got so much angst about having to go out and deal with, just getting something notarized and sending it. Sending it, I did that already. I can do that again. But the notarizing, that's something I haven't. I had to notarize something, I think, when I first moved in. Maybe something to do with buying the house or whatever. But I haven't had to do it since. And it's like, I search online and there's like one place within, you know, about 35, 40-minute walk. I know that there's got to be something at the university, someone who's a notary public, but they, you know, they don't advertise or whatever. I actually suspect that in my old department, someone had been, but I don't. In fact, I'm pretty sure they were. But I don't think they're still there, and I only know, you know, a couple of people there, and it's like. It's easier to just deal with a business, but like, I'm worried maybe I get there and they can't do it, and that I should have a couple backups written down or something that are a little further away. It's just, this kind of thing just causes me, like any kind of set up something new that I have to cope with causes me so much angst. Fundamentally trivial compared to like getting a plumber. You know, that I have to like call someone, which I can't do. Given the capability to break down units into divisions, I really wish there was something that allowed me to form core out of some of these divisions, because I have like British divisions that are fucking useless to me, just like the Belgian divisions. I want to create core, you know. I don't count on the fact, I believe actually these aren't that bad. I'm just noticing they're divisions, not core. I've been treating them as core, but I think stacking wise, I can use two of them, and then they're about equivalent to anyone else's core. But I want less counters, you know. I want to be used to 3 pieces stacking instead of dealing with, I'm looking for where stacking is. It's got to be before this. Automatic victory. So before the sequence apply? Yeah, great. Up to 3 are infantry cavalry units, corps or division. No, they're shitty. So I don't know what the argument is that these divisions have to exist in that structure and can't be in some larger structure. Why they take up the same stacking space as a corps does. It's fine in some places like the Italian front or something where I want to spread out, and I'm okay with that, but I would really like a 4-6-3 instead of a pair of these 2-3-3s. And likewise this thing, I would really rather combine these territorials and make a 4-6-4. That would serve some point. You know, these don't even serve a point. Uh-oh, I got to change batteries. What they're really useful for is as garrisons. And I don't know if I have them as garrisons. Yeah, these are full core that the Austrians have. They, you know, there I might want to break things down. And I probably should to get some more units into play. But for these Entente ones, the West Front is filled. I don't have room for these extra divisions. I would have room for extra corps maybe. And if I use them in an invasion or something, they have the same feeding requirements because they're not 1-strength divisions. So they have the same feeding requirements as a full corps. So they're kind of a waste there. They serve one purpose, garrisoning, and garrisoning is not particularly necessary right now. I haven't conquered anything with the Entente. Anyway, let's get back to trying to build more units. Problem. This is me. I've got 12 French infantry points left over. I know that's not right. They did not have, you know, a return of points or anything like that. I'm going to assume they have nothing left. The artillery is probably right. But, yeah, it's just, I'm regularly finding myself in that position where I have to make this decision of, yeah, did I fuck up and forget to move it back? again, that's just me. The puffy counter writing, I don't even think I can blame it on that. A little bit of you know what I forgot? Beaches aren't the only thing I can invade ports. This was stupid. I should have hit something like Bremen or Hamburg. Oh, well. Like the idea of garrisoning this stuff feels so alien to me. I'm sure there were troops garrisoning it, but lightly. Anyway, I need a little bit of a break here before I tackle the west front. On the east front, I identified 2 attacks, really trying to retake the 2 hexes that the Germans took. I've got reasonable odds, I think 2 to 1s on them, which could go very badly. They could break my line, but my line is compromised here, and I don't know. This maybe isn't that important, but I feel like, all right, there's mobile units, I must attack them. And the Italian front, which is totally worthless. The Italians can't really attack. Even trying to ooze or something doesn't do much, although I am trying to get around this flank. I can't get around Trieste. Cutting through these gaps like that could be very useful someplace like here, but you need the troops to do it. And I just don't have the force pool right now to get in there. The Italians have a fair amount of replacement points. They just don't have the pieces. They will get some more. Everybody gets some more, but they're not spending their replacement points, which makes it like, yeah, they should be doing some kind of attritional attacks. Yeah, they should be, but, and, you know, history tells you that any kind of offensive on the Italian front is just stupid at this kind of point or whatever. The Italians aren't going to break things. They historically did them, and they probably had some effect in terms of draining the Austrians, but here it would just be bad. Both sides don't pay no matter what for a combat. That's one of the things that feels so wrong. I gotta say, it feels wrong in other eras too, but it's like the attritional nature of World War I is just so predominant that it's like, the game should reflect it in ways that this one just doesn't, and others, earlier designs do. I don't know how bad 1914 is. I've heard horror stories about it, basically. This may be an improvement on that. There may be worse games out there. But, you know, I've tried to stay away from things that nobody would want to play unless I already own them. Quick analysis of this hex right here, if I wanted to attack this. It's got 19 strength points in it. That means I'm going to need 57 to attack. 57 divided by 3, because I can attack from 3 different hexes here. Just to give you the, is it possible, right? 57 divided by 3 gives me 19 per hex. My best French infantry are 5-pointers. That gives me 15 in a hex. 16, 17, 18 if I throw the artillery in. I can't physically do it with the French. It's just not possible. So I can just pass on that, right? And that's really kind of what's happening across here, is that I'm just facing such large strength point blocks that I can't push through. Unfortunately, the German maneuvers to strengthen their north have opened things up. I don't need to do anything tricky here. I don't need to do attritional. The Brits are set up for a 3 to 1 right there. All right. I'm not even thinking about down here. It's just not worth it. If the Germans have actually started pulling their siege artillery off, they may attempt to take Warsaw or something with it, because the West Front is simply locked in. Probably ought to move some of these French units that are sitting on production cities, huh? Again, they're not really doing anything. They're just there if the meat grinder asks, but the meat grinder don't ask. If this were Le Grand Guerre, in this kind of situation, I would actually consider expanding and opening up Switzerland with the French if I was in this kind of position. Because I definitely have more counters. I just can't get them to the front is full. And I can't use them for attrition, and I can't use them to outflank. If I could send them to Russia, it would be great. And I can't use them in Italy. I'm prohibited from that until some point. I don't remember when. I think 18, but I'm not sure. And any kind of sea transport that I did would cause me to lose, to have to be doing sea supply and all that. Conceivably, I could be using French to do some kind of expeditionary force or something somewhere. But no real opportunity is asking for it. What about slipping into something like Bremen? Well, I can't coordinate these two, but Hamburg, open up another hole. I don't know what happens. Like, I've got this British salient here. I don't know what happens. I don't even know how to define that. Like, that doesn't really fit in it, but I think it's legitimate. Otherwise, I don't know what would make sense. Oddly enough, France doesn't have any sea capacity. I don't know what that means, because I think they and the United States are allowed to invade, but I guess they use British sea capacity. But again, sea capacity is my limitation here. Maybe I could pull some of those Brits out. Those are better than French units. Swap the French in somewhere else. I have enough seafaring capacity to pull out of here and move 3 French into like Hamburg and really kind of fuck around. That would be interesting. Did I send an artillery here? Ooh, that's not good. The Brits need their artillery. So it's not clear that the French can use British sea power, but the French are allowed to invade, and there's no other sea power to use, so I'm assuming. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift a bunch of French units here. This is, again, just trying to find something that'll shake up the situation, and this prepares me. I can make an invasion of Hamburg, throw a big threat into the center of Germany, and force the Germans to garrison around that. Pull these fuckers out. And get them, because the Brits have slightly better units, and another British artillery is absolutely vital to me. It was really a mistake to put a British artillery there. All right, let's do my attacks. I have a Russian artillery somewhere. Let me just dump it in this hole. Yeah, the Russians, they're trying to spread out and make sure that they can cover all their ground with some factors. And, I mean, like with this German unit, I'm pulling units off to do stuff, and it's not absolutely clear where the weaknesses lie when you do try to shift units around and stuff. But they do open up, and, I mean, it's just such a pain to investigate the stacks that unless I happen to get lucky and notice some of the randomness in the game, do you notice that you have an attack? Very good results. DDs in both cases, which allow them to take the locations that improve their line, restoring it back to where it was, actually with stronger points in defense than they had before. So it's going to be, even though they're mobile, it's going to be hard to push them out comparatively. But kind of importantly, that means I didn't take any losses, so my big stacks of units that I really do kind of need to start building, that I need to build, right? I just don't have the RPs to build them, I'm going to be able to get more units back because I didn't take a cost. Here, though, we got kind of a mixed result. We got a no decision, which is pretty much close to the worst result we could get. We could have gotten an AD on a 1, which would have flung the Brits back, and it would have been a massive disaster. The Germans come flowing in. All kind of problems open up because hexes, that I'm not counting on defending with demoralized units or whatever are present. That's a very bad result, right? That's the thing you don't want. And 10% of the time at a 3-to-1, you're making that. By the way, it's going to get worse in multiple layers because all these level 1 fort trenches, those are going to be able to turn into level 2s, and I've got to keep track of the differentiation between them, and I don't have enough counters to do that. But also those level 2s are going to be a -2, so then they make the 3-to-1s 20% of the time a really bad result. AD, and then AX, which I don't know if that's worse than the AD or not. It depends on whether or not ground or losses are more important. And AX says you lose as many strength points as the defender had. That seems pretty bad, but you don't lose any territory necessarily. Whereas with an AD, if you're attacking with 3 or 4 hexes, you go flying back and you open up this huge gap. I think that's a worse result in the way things are going. It depends. The Germans are stretched for manpower right now on the front. The French are not. So the French could afford that AX. But the ADs, I don't think anybody wants to see. But the Germans kind of couldn't handle either one. So once those trenches get to level 2, 3-to-1 becomes really risky. And then what? Then it's 4-to-1. Well, maybe we get some toys like tanks and airplanes and stuff that increase our capability to launch some attacks. But I don't have a lot of hope for that really helping much. But here's what happened. Because the Brits got an ND, they have to lose their strongest unit. Well, that's one of these BEF units. I've preserved them all game, mainly by not using the Brits. Now that's going to get replaced with a weaker version and, goes into the replacement pool. Sure, I got the points for it, but I don't get this yummy unit anymore. In the morning, it's late enough I could go out and do things, right? I'm not done with my coffee yet, though, and, it's going to get a little warmer. It looks pretty out. I really need to do it today. I really do. It's just a matter of, if I don't do it today, why will I do it tomorrow type of thinking, But eventually that will work, I hope. But it's like, yeah, the angst and the trying to consider how I'm going to cope with it and everything, even though I know how I'm going to cope with it. The only question is if things go wrong, if I get there and they can't take it, so I find a couple other addresses where there will be a notary public, but and write them down. But it's like, just the thought of it is just so defeating to me. Anyhow, here we are. Let's get a CP turn out of the way, and then I'll go play a little bit more of my video game, and then maybe I'll make my way out. I hope. I can also do some shopping on the way back, just a little shopping, but I need milk. I just ran out. And, I'm low on spinach. And I have no treats, or very few treats. 684s are too good to forego. Yeah, I may have to shift things later, but right now, if I want to gain any ground, I need to use them. Now, of course, these guys who are demoralized, I can't launch an attack with them. So, that kind of this weak spot that they moved on, I don't have the capability to just thrust them right back out. When units are destroyed, you do have kind of more of that capability because you're like, okay, well, I got to shift more units to cover the line there. And once you make that decision, it's like, yeah, you shift some things around and I got an attack there. But with the demoralized, in a way, it's kind of like, yeah, but I can hold the line there just fine. Gaining that hex isn't that big a deal. I'll find somewhere else to attack or not or whatever. Gathering at Calais. What's up with them? Do I notice them as the Germans? Now, if they had gathered at like Amsterdam or The Hague, or is that a port? Yeah. The Hague. Something like that. I probably wouldn't notice them. I'm going to give myself... I don't know, say a 1, 2, or 3. I'm aware of the problem, and maybe I deploy myself a couple of breakdown divisions or something like that to defend the 2 ports that can be attacked. No, I'm going to ignore the problem. It really, the way the focus has been, and the fact that they invaded here but not one of the ports, might have my mind completely off of it. It's one of the ways I kind of handle something if I feel like somebody's pulling something out of their ass or utilizing the rules in ways that like I haven't really been paying attention to. I don't like to just say, okay, now we both know, right? I think I can come up with, I've got 1 attack here. I don't think I've got any more here. I don't think I have any in the West Front. But I see an opportunity to smack the Italians a little bit. Oh, fuck. No, I don't. I gotta redo that. I forgot about the mountains. I was like, oh, that's just a -1. No, it's halved. I can't possibly hit there. Okay, never mind. What I was gonna say is I ended up like 1 strength point short of what I thought was a 3-to-1, but it's not because it's in the fucking mountains. So it's like a 1.5 to 1. So forget that. But yeah, coming up with that extra strength point was going to be really, really hard. I can't figure out where I can make an attack though. Maybe if I replace these guys, I don't know. Try to push back here, or not these guys, right? Because I'm attacking here, so I was using one of the forces that would be up there. God, it's just so fucking hard. It's so annoying. It's me a 2-to-1 here. I'm guessing this is probably a 2-to-1 as well. And that's where we're going to stop. I look around, make sure that I don't have troops floating around, because that's another thing that often happens, is that I have armies left that like I forget to use, and they might serve some valuable purpose. Certainly, if I had like a corps left, I could garrison those 2 cities. Give myself another shot at it just because I'm rolling. Oh, you know what I wanted to do? I wanted to consider a breakdown and getting one of those Serb corps out of there. Oh, but no, the big question is, so garrisoning my own cities is fine. That just protects them from being invaded. I think garrisoning surrendered stuff requires a whole corps. Yeah, 1 corps or 2 divisions. Yeah, so it doesn't do me any good to break them down. I hope I have corps there. I know that I was considering, I know that I put weak units there, but they were weak, big Austrian, like crappy Austrian corps. Fine. That's okay. Like the 3-point Austrian corps can do it. Yeah, so there's it's so hard to find something I can do with the damn breakdown units. Yeah, somebody mentioned that they remembered them from Guns of August. Now, the other guy who I had talked to about this was like, yeah, I didn't really see much point to him. This guy seemed to think that there was a point, but the only point I can think of is, I don't know, I mean, they can defend like a mountain area, or something along those lines, where you might be spreading your line out a little thinner. They're not going to help you on attack. That's obvious. They're too crappy. But they can help stretch your line out a little bit. The problem is it's a weak point in your line in general. And, you know, I mean, I'm finding myself putting pretty heavy units on the Italian border just to make sure that they can't break through. I probably am overcommitted over there, but I don't know, they kind of pushed me back a little bit, right? So, what the hell? You know? Even that fine Alpine division got shoved back by the Italians, but now I feel like, yeah, I've got enough there to hold it. We shall see. It's just it's so hard because you have to calculate not just what is there, but what might be there, and it's just easier as a rule of thumb to throw enough troops to hold them off, which is usually a couple of corps, except where, I mean, like a couple corps doesn't really work here, and doesn't really work here. But against Italy, it kind of does. They just don't have a lot of strength points available. You could say, well, the Russians, you know, have kind of weaker units, just like the Austrians do. You'd think a couple of corps could do it. Yeah, but the problem is, you got to compare the units to each other, and like, if the other guy can throw, you know, 9 units plus artillery against you, that's a lot. Like 9 fours is 36, and you know, 3 artillery, that gets me up to like 42. What does that mean? That means I have to have more than 14 strength points to hold something. Not in the mountains. Mountains are a little stronger. But more than 14 strength points. Well, 2 normal Russian corps is like 12 strength points. So already I'm like, yeah, I got to put 3 units in there. Now, maybe I can break down and you know, instead of 3 corps, I can go with 2 corps in a division or something like that. But it's really, you know, I'm just not finding myself wanting to squeeze that little extra out for the extra amount of calculation. It's already hard enough to find, you know, to figure out attacks and everything. And if I got a bunch of little shit in there, I don't know. I'm just so disgusted with this design in so many ways in terms of playability. It's everything I don't like, right, about like games like Stalingrad, the old games. Take it up a notch. It's like, let's take that let's take the dumb, you know, early 1970s quality game, and let's make it a little harder to do. And it's already a type of system that I just really fucking hate. And then, you know, they picking off being able to attack a single hex with multiple waves, whatever you want to call it. Again, that's just a complication I don't like. There's nothing I like about this game. So even though, and through, you know, means that I don't think are believable, it's acquiring a certain kind of accuracy for the trench warfare. It didn't manage, I felt, to capture the mobile game very well. Oh, the net effects of the trench warfare are working maybe better than any other game. I don't remember First World War. I told someone I'm going to get back to that because I want to see that race here design. I remember being really impressed with it, and maybe just maybe it's the best in terms of historical. I don't remember what I liked so much about it. I read through my notes on it, but this one is doing something that that I'm used to griping about in other games, where you can just press so damn hard and really, you know, kind of force the enemy's economy to collapse. under the weight. One side or the other has the advantage at pushing things on each front in games like World War I or the Great War. And therefore, while they may have difficulty finding good attacks, if they can find decent attacks, they want to do them for the attritional value that they're getting. Even not so good attacks become worthwhile for the attritional value, to take the pressure off the other front. Well, the Grand Guerre is an absolute mess. Balance of power feels like it has that same problem. So I'm left with kind of, none of the others quite get it right, and this almost feels right. It's just for the wrong fucking reason. It's because everybody's afraid to attack. It's like, World War I without, with the decision not to conduct anything like an offensive. If this forced offensives, would that do it somehow? I don't know. Because that definitely feels like that's something missing from this. I don't know if the original Guns of August had required offensives or something. But I mean, if you were required to do offensives and had to make attacks that were less than the 3-to-1 odds, I mean, the fronts would just be way too chaotic and fluid. So obviously that's not a simple fix you could put in play. I don't know. I think that's all I'm doing. Like, ignoring the West Front because the West Front is too hard. Like, I couldn't find an attack. I really couldn't. I think. Did I look? Yeah. I mean, there's these big stacks. I can't cope with these. I checked this one, I think. Ooh, I really ought to fill that in. That is a hole. Keep pumping manpower into it because, again, I don't feel like I'm really being taxed all that heavily with the Central Powers in terms of the manpower being drained. The attacks are too limited on the West Front to make me feel terrible about it. Although, obviously, if I pulled back here, it's a stronger line. I don't know. It's a hard call. That's sort of the Hindenburg line type of decision. Hey, let's just pull back and let them have the terrain. And I have real difficulty giving them that because I feel like they will fuck up on an attack and give me an option that I don't have otherwise. There's not much here. But it's big. There's a mighty 4-to-1 here. Got the hex with the defender eliminated. Great. Kind of question whether I want to take the hex because it's just expanding my front line. I did so. I feel weak there now. With only 2 units there. And I really can't afford to give up, the entrenched positions. This is sort of a gimme. If they want to attack it, fine. They'll probably hurt themselves on it somewhat at least. So, okay. And I might be able to, grind forward in one of these hexes and just keep pushing forward. So I'm taking it, but it does feel pretty questionable. That one I'm pretty sure is only a 3-to-1. Is it 2-to-1? Again, we're in a weak position. The Russians are going to be able to knock us out of it. Probably, but we got a half exchange. That's pretty good. It was a 2-to-1 without entrenchments. I forgot the river line and all that. Yeah, 2-to-1 was all I could manage. I don't have an attack anywhere else. Fuck it. I recover. I think I've got other recoveries to make. I don't know. Anyway, that is the end of the Central Powers side. As usual, I'm going to surrender. I think I'll call today a partial success. What I did was I looked online, found various places that are notaries. Actually, none of which are as close as I thought there was one. So, we're talking more like at least a 45-minute walk. That may have been what I quoted before, but probably a little less. But then my thoughts ran to a couple of other things, which was the university's nearby. So I searched that, Now, it doesn't show up when I look for notaries, and it does have services mostly aligned with the community itself, the students, the professors, whatever. So, yeah, I probably don't want to try that. But then I also see that my bank probably does. Again, not advertised when I look for notaries, and if they take it, they probably will do it for free because I'm a customer there. Regardless, that would be the easiest. It's the closest to me. And I'm just like, okay, I spent, a half hour or whatever searching, maybe a little longer. And, it's like, I don't know, it may be past 2 p.m., but not by much, not by too much. And certainly I could go. But I'm like, so terrified of like the interaction going into the bank, asking, having to stop at various places. And I'm like, I feel like I need to psych myself up another day. Like I could have done this looking stuff up today. Of course, if I was a normal person, had a phone and the willingness to use it, if I had one, I still wouldn't use it for this. I could call places like my bank up and see if they could. There's also some places that are only by reservation or whatever. But, I'm just not that kind of person. I can't cope with that on the phone. I think I can cope with pushing myself to the location and actually going inside. Although even that is of question. I might get there and be like, I just can't do it today. Which would really suck. There's no real harm to me delaying another day. I say to myself. And I am kind of tired. Of course, I might be worse off tomorrow. Anyway, I'm not awake enough to play another turn or another half turn or whatever. So I'll hold off on that, but it's just so pathetic how I am, but it is how I am. I'm incapable of doing the things that a normal person finds not that difficult. Here it is, Tuesday morning, I guess, just soon after midnight. It's like 1 a.m., I suppose. And on to the Entente. I kind of have to go tomorrow. And actually, I should have gone today because, it wouldn't have happened. But I kind of should go regular shopping this week, too. Everything's so fucked up in my life, and I'm just so incapable of coping. And that's why everything's fucked up. Anyway, let's get to the Entente. They actually have some stuff I have to put out on the board somewhere. Things were a little confused. I had some Russians in here that are due next turn, not this turn. That's no big deal. I just shifted them. Mistakes get made. It doesn't even impact anything. But I have more British troops coming in and my potential French invasion. I have to make a decision between the two because I'm still supplying these guys. I was considering pulling those out. Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know what to do. Like, the idea of two different forces is appealing, but anyway, that's going to put me to movement. Actually, I'll probably be up very shortly, but right now, I don't really want to do more. I don't know why. I just have something else I'm involved in. It's so funny how I operate. I know I need to go do stuff tomorrow. Today I was all set, timing-wise and everything, had it all handled well. My plan was tonight to get more sleep than usual. Maybe get up, whatever. It's like, getting close to 3 now. And, what I ended up doing is I just ended up sabotaging myself by getting hooked on something else for a little while, something that I couldn't pull away from, unlike this, which, is very, I play for a little while and I'm like, I have to get away from it. All right, anyway, let me do the Entente turn. And, what's worse is I spent money on something, not a lot, like $6 on a trial thing. And it's like, it's just stupid, It's like I knew it was the wrong thing to do, but it's how I operate. Anything to try and throw a monkey wrench in my plans. The camera, because even the East Front is getting tiring at this point. With all the mess there is, the counters, wrong kind of counters everywhere, all kind of stuff. I found one attack to this. I couldn't make an attack here. Shifting forces, trying to keep my defensive lines as steady as possible. Again, I can't find much real value to extending lines. So for example, let's say I broke down a unit to try to extend out here. It's only on the rail lines that you can really advance. So just extending the line doesn't do me anything unless I'm getting more strength against the German unit there. It's possible, or whatever. It's possible that the Austrians could extend this way and get more in this direction. But again, everybody except the Western Allies are really kind of stretched to their limits everywhere. There aren't a lot of Central Powers units that I can devote to doing a damn thing. And in terms of the Russians, yeah, they're kind of stretched out. They got a lot of extra troops. They can't build them. The one area where I really have an excess of troops for one side, it is the Entente in France. And that French front is like, yeah, I got a lot, which is why I'm thinking about doing another invasion, opening up more space or something. Or an invasion and a withdrawal, perhaps. But let's look at the Italians first. Fucking tight-packed counters, glossy counters which squirt out of your fingers and stuff. I mean, there's just... there's a reason I stay away from things like the diffraction games, which have huge piles of counters. And for that matter, from the big dumb monsters, the Europa and all that. I'm just not interested in this kind of density of shit. It doesn't really represent accurately, I think, what the combat is like. It's a simple mechanism, or it's a simple design type idea, but there's just much better ways, like organizing things into armies and whatnot, the way Le Grand Guerre does, the way the Zucker operational games do. Piles of counters stacked thickly together generally is a sign of a game I don't like much. In the West, I swapped out the Brits, pulled them out of here, dropped some French into here. You can make an argument I should keep the Brits. Yeah, but I want British troops here because the Brits are able to launch another attack. This hex, and I'm not going to unstack it, has 2 mobile German units and an entrenched one. If I attack them all together, all I need is the 2-to-1 because the 2 mobiles out-strength the entrenched guy. Forts are better for this because they automatically entrench you, essentially. The only problem with forts is the siege artillery, which I don't know. I know I was planning on shipping it to Warsaw. I only need 1 of them because I'm not getting anything off of Verdun here. And so I'm launching an attack here. I'm also launching an attack here to try to cut Trieste off. That'll cut some supply points, some replacement points off from the Austrians, and maybe I can get enough force there. You know what? I didn't look at all these. Let me take care of them, but I don't expect I'll get an attack out of that. But I didn't think I'd get this one either. That was set up all along there. Shit, no, it's not. This is in the mountains. Fuck me. Yeah. Always forget the mountains. Okay, so over here, The Russians got a lucky half exchange, which means we have a reasonable force there. Not anything great, but we've advanced. The fight over this hex is going to continue, basically, because we're not able to throw enough in there to prevent the Germans from pushing in. But we did cause more damage than we took. Half exchange is a little bit of a better exchange rate. And exchange is a bad rate because you're facing those increased defensive values. Over here, I couldn't find shit. We did do the invasion in Hamburg and the withdrawal of British troops here. The British attack here, big attack, again, 2-1, just like that was, but it got a worse die roll, got a full exchange. Still not a bad die roll, one that I can accept because I get the hex, but exceedingly painful because there were a lot of German strength points there. So we took a loss of a lot of British units. I didn't lose anything that was too important. Like, I didn't lose any of the units that I think I have to replace with weaker units. But I have a couple of real weak spots in my line now. Now, this one's only touched by one German stack, so that's unlikely to be attacked across the river. This one's touched by two German stacks across the river. It's actually at a bit of a threat. But the Germans are also losing big units. Their 6/8s are getting eaten up. I don't think I have any disorders, disruptions, demoralized, whatever they are, which means we will be pulling forward into the next turn where we have, looks like that's Bulgaria about to come into the game. Well, maybe about to come in. I don't know if anybody else is in there. Doesn't look like it. But yeah, and I'm playing less because, you know, I'm trying to avoid not the game so much as the things I need to do in life, and the game isn't absorbing enough of my attention to make me able to just come up here and drown myself in it the way sometimes I can, when what I really should be doing is fucking sleeping. But we are seeing some serious changes in the situation, some more drama than I would expect in 1915. 1915 is kind of the donkeys, right? It's like where everybody's just attritioning. Well, because nothing changes, no technology changes other than the trench values, the capabilities of trenches. The game doesn't really provide you with too much distinguishment between the years. Now, next year we're going to see the trenches go up to 2, which should actually make them worse. But honestly, I think that the attacks in 15 were more attritional than the attacks later on. Now, later on, well, we do get some technology. We get the tanks and the Strasstruppen as well. So, you know, I mean, it's the equivalent to World War I or Great War in terms of like the technology changes in the game. But yeah, I'm just so used to La Grande Guerre and all the intricate interactions between, you know, the different means of conducting an attack, essentially. How much, you know, you have to have a certain technology to unleash gas or to use rolling barrages or this, that, and the other. And it just, they all give you different little ways of getting, trying to achieve different results. And sometimes you change them based on what kind of weaponry you have available rather than just, oh, I'll use the latest tech. Charged. Here we are. It's Tuesday. I'm planning on going after lunch. I did sleep until like 5 or 6. Although I'm worried I'm going to feel tired, but whatever. One advantage to going today was I was able to check my mail another day. I'm expecting another form that I need to send out, but it didn't come, so. And I had to, you know, I could have checked yesterday, but one more day would have helped. month, and I have to bring my garbage down today. Anyway, I did check, it wasn't there. I didn't bring my garbage down because I couldn't decide whether or not to throw out my shortening, which is 8 years old and rancid, and I really should, but I have a lot of it. I will remember never to buy that whole big tub of it. This has happened before in my life, I'm sure of it, I just didn't notice. Anyway, Bulgaria is coming in, or potentially coming in. Now, they would automatically come in if I wasn't playing with this option, but this option helps you snowball effects in the game. So I kind of like that. I need a 9. Central Powers have lost Lemberg, and the Dutch major city, I hope there's only one. They might, I know they lost 2 cities up here. They lost The Hague, and they lost Amsterdam. Yeah, that's actually 3 major cities that we've lost. So things are looking worse for the Central Powers. It's not sorry, wrong one. We do not control any Russian cities, nor these. The Ottomans have joined, so we're at -2. We can't possibly come in. That's going to be another 6 months, and then the rest is just grabbing, extra units for the replacement pool, which the Central Powers just has a huge replacement pool already. They don't need them. They're never going to reach them. It is one thing in this game, you might, because of the disincentives for fighting, you might actually get your whole army on the field. In the Great War, you can get your whole army on the field. In fact, it's desirable to do so because there aren't the same kind of stacking limits. It's an area-based game. German units added to the pool, all the same 463s, like 5 of them. Yeah, I'm never going to have that kind of production as long as I keep conducting offensives in the East. Also, though, the weather. We got rains early. There's mud everywhere. Calculations are a little worse. I forgot. I just lost Hamburg. Oops. Something that's been a continual annoyance for me throughout the game, which is because artillery's got a different track. The Germans are up at their maximum artillery. They're producing 4 per turn, but they're not able to use them. Same way the Brits were trapped at one point, I think. I'm not sure if they were. But anyway, this is something obnoxious in the game. This never happens. The other games don't generally represent artillery as something separate. It is separate here. You could say, well, I'm just not careful enough. Yeah, there's a lot in this game that I'm just unwilling to be careful enough with, right? And making sure that while I'm calculating my losses from a given fight, that I lose enough artillery to make up the next turn is hard to do. I manage to do it every now and then. Like when it stings me, I do it. But the reality is getting artillery on the field is hard because it's got a slower movement rate. But I can't afford not, to keep burning those resources. Those are resources that I can't replace. And I don't know. I'm guessing that manpower is included in this, but I'm not really convinced what's going on. Like it's like manpower is the amount of units that you can build, but it's also somehow included in this. Maybe the manpower flow or whatever. But I'm just like left with this, look, it doesn't make sense. If my units are going to the meat grinder, I should only be able, I really don't understand what the force pool limitation is, except that, you need it, there's a counter mix. But I don't really understand this constant effort to bring more replacement units into play that if you're able to, you can build them. It's just very hard to accept that, like, the Brits would have the excess manpower that they had because they aren't fighting and would not organize more units. Like, if the manpower's there, it's there. Why are the units trickling in for availability and whatnot when I do already have this manpower aspect? And that's the division between the artillery and the infantry, really, is that, yeah, the infantry may include how many guns and bullets I can get to the troops, but it also seems to include the actual manpower that I have, because otherwise I could re-gear my industry or something to produce other things. You have those options in La Grande Guerre. You know, there are units you have to pay for or whatever because they're special, but those are generally handled, like, the idea is that you have enough production to keep all your units in the field is kind of the idea, and that's where the units come in there. And you actually, I don't remember. But I think with artillery, you actually have to spend, but you certainly have to spend on the ammo for the artillery. Building new artillery units doesn't help if you don't have the ammo to back them up. And with the infantry and whatnot, you don't have to pay for the ammo in the same way, but you do upgrade the units using money and whatnot and time. I don't know. But here I'm just left with this real kind of, yeah, once again, I'm facing an irritation to play where I'm wasting resources, but can't really justify what's going on. And I never felt like I was in that position in any of the other games, no matter how flawed they were in other ways. Anyway, that's just another one of those, yeah, I don't know what's going on. Oh, look, I didn't move any of my French. How fucking brilliant of me. I concentrated so much up here, I didn't move them. Let's get some up here, not in Lille there, just to make up for that, because, yeah, that's idiotic. But yeah, fuck. All right, onward. Yeah, you know, I'm up here a new day, new reasons to delay, or same old reasons, but new desires. And again, I'm like harping on the same flaws and whatnot because they're just so fucking annoying. I think for the CP, we came up with one big attack here. Wasn't able to attack in Hamburg, so I put some guard on that. I had to cover this gap that the Brits blew open, and I'm not sure I did it because I'm still mobile. Yeah, I'm across the river, but they might get a lucky shot or whatever. I tried to defend it as well as I could, backed it up a little bit with some additional units. I did throw a siege gun out here. My hope is to take Warsaw out. That'll make it possible maybe to start pounding from this side a little bit, but it's really hard. You know, like over here I have numerical advantage, but not quite enough that I feel like I can do attacks. And because the mud came in, that's what really stopped this. The mud was a huge deal. Because I could have conceivably, well, I didn't have enough troops to make that attack and rush in there. So that wouldn't have happened. But the mud actually prevented me from defending this line as well as I might. And I think it's preventing me from making a second attack over here. That's fine. In terms of historical accuracy and whatnot, the weather definitely plays a part. And, you know, maybe I can start cracking the Russian line, but it's really beginning to look like the Central Powers are teetering here. I don't know. I don't know how long they can last. I'm starting to try to squeeze this unit out so I can swap something in there for the Sarajevo. That is an important city for some things or another. I also have no idea how many points I could well lose in the 1915 winter. I think there's a sudden death victory check there. But I'm trying to gain what I can. I don't see any way to squeeze around that. I'm hoping I have enough troops as I, establish myself with these French, but here's the problem. These French already had a -1 for Hamburg and the river and everything. It was really a hard thing to attack. And that means I'm going to have a really hard time dislodging them. I couldn't dislodge the Brits either, so, All right, I guess I do my one attack and call it good enough. Attack resulted in a shitty no decision, so I didn't even get the hex, which means the Russians still aren't going to be able to fully defend that hex because all they got is an artillery there. Yeah, I don't even know if that can dig in on its own. But whatever, it's not going to be enough strength points to hold it. And that means that I'm not going to have the penalty next turn when they're in there. Not much change in anything, obviously, and my sort of disgust with the game is causing me to play less, complain more. Snuck back up here. It's getting right on noon. My plan was to leave around 12:30. I may be pushing that a little later because of the fact that the bank is like less than 45 minutes away, and I'm just like, let's make sure we miss the lunch hour or whatever. Really, it's just me delaying, trying to avoid doing this, but I know I have to do it today. So let's get on with the Entente turn and see whether they have anything coming. Certainly they have stuff. I mean, I have to fill in the gaps and whatnot. Although with the mud, that might not be possible because I'm kind of far from the rail lines there. I mean, obviously I can shift things, but that means giving up my entrenchments everywhere, but that might be the better move to get enough forces into play. Bit of annoyance, I may have mentioned this before in October. I add a couple of 464 infantries, another 464 infantry, Colonial 3 in North Africa. Now the British colonials are marked differently and they actually use a different replacement pool, but and I guess that includes Canada and the Australian, the Commonwealth stuff. But this colonial unit looks exactly the same as these other units. How am I going to distinguish, these units? How am I going to distinguish that it's a colonial, and remember, my guess is I'm supposed to build it in North Africa, not in France. Now, given that France has no shipping, and they really should, it feels kind of crazy anyway. But I feel like if I build that unit, I have to build it down in Algiers, which I think means I have to connect Algiers with a supply route to be able to build it. So it's going to cost me a shipping to build it, and then another shipping to move it over. And I'm already using up 3 shipping here. So, and all I have is the British shipping. That all feels kind of weird. Luckily, I don't think I need that unit, but yeah. Eventually, when I get through the 464s, well, the 463s make more sense than the 464s simply because I won't have to go through all that effort. But will I even notice that it's a different kind of unit that I am supposed to do that with? It's not clear that I am forced to build it in North Africa, but why else separate it out from the other units? I don't know. Well, because the other units were 463s, right? No, they were 464s. Yeah, I don't know. Actually, I think they're 463s. No. Okay. All right. Essentially nothing happened. I built up my line here, nothing here. The French didn't do shit, plowed more troops into the Netherlands, which they can't use. I don't know what to do with them. These lines are so fucking thick. But the Brits decided, hey, I got a 2-to-1 coming across the river. Let's do it. Well, fuck around and find out. Eventually, fighting on the 2-to-1 chart, even just natural, that 20% is going to come up, and we lost those 2 hexes. We fought real hard to get a hex back. Well, now we don't have it. There is some possibility of an attack against the Brits. These are demoralized units at the end of the turn. I already got rid of the DTSs. So, again, it's this highly volatile combat system that every now and then entices you. I'm like, yeah, let's try to get the attritional results. They're working fine. The Brits have way too much of this left. Granted. So the reason the British infantry is at 9 here, and there's stacks of units, and I could have built one of them, is because I forgot to. Oh no, I did not forget. I sent British in through Antwerp. I've got 3 units stacked here. I've got an overflow of stuff that I can't ship in because I have to supply those French invasion force. But that's fine. Eventually, I might have to move units around in Britain. This is why the Algiers thing is problematic, because I just don't have the shipping for it. Anyway, it looks like that's pretty much the end of the turn. Very little play, because I could spend a lot of time looking, trying to find some attack or something or another. But I just don't think I would. I just don't think it was there. So I went to the one place that I was pretty sure was and conducted the attack. Maybe these French want to attack. What do I got here? I got 12. I got a 2-to-1 there. Do I want to risk that? I feel like I'm doing quite a bit by being there. And that 2-to-1 could very easily destroy me. So, no. Decide to do a quick check. There is no sudden death for 1915. There will be one in 1916. Now, national morale comes in 1915, but I doubt anybody's going to collapse all at once. They might cause problems. But here's the situation. I'm looking at 1916 because I'm not seeing any possibility of the Central Powers gaining ground ever. Like, they're going to lose the game. That's almost assured at this point. But I look at the 1916, they give victory points for each of the following cities in Allied occupied by Central Powers. I have 1 French city. I have 1 Belgian city, or sorry, 1 Serbian city. That's 2. All supplied, so I'm fine. But I lose victory points for each of the following. 1 for each other major city. Right now, Lemberg, it's possible I could take that back, but it doesn't look too likely. So I was at 2. So I lose 1 for Lemberg. I lose 1 for whatever got invaded up here. Oh, wait. I forgot. I have Nancy. So that was 3. It goes to 2 for Lemberg. 1-0 for the 2 Dutch cities that got taken. Another 1 for this, but maybe I take that back. So let's ignore that. But right now I'm at like 0 points. I get a point for the invasion of the Netherlands, making up for my losses there. There's a few other Aachen could fall. No, it wouldn't. My attack was on Aachen. It's going the other way. Saarbrücken, Graz, Sarajevo. I do have Sarajevo still. Who gets the points for that? These are points that would be taken off. Only half points for a city that can't trace by rail. So I get a half point back for that. That's only worth a half point if it is indeed captured. But we were at around 0. I have to have 9 or more victory points to just auto win. But the Allies will win if the Central Powers has 3 or fewer. And I really think that it's going to be hard for me to get any territory back in 1916 or ever. So that's something to keep in mind. When 1916 comes around, the Central Powers have to push somewhere. They have to figure out somewhere where they can win. It's possible it could be Russia. That's the only place where I see any chances. And I am trying to shift things into place there. And then, yeah, and I won't worry about the national morale because that's a die roll. there is some chance that the Central Powers could like start collapsing, getting worse morale or something like that. Well, I don't know what it is. I don't know what they get hurt with. Don't remember what the national morale effects are. Here they are. So RPs get reduced for that year. The low morale, I don't remember what that does. 2133. But that's probably the worst I could get, I'm guessing. And that's just going to make things worse in combat. Units may not attack. Yeah, well, that kind of ends the game, right? Attacker receives a +1 DRM when making units of countries with low morale. Add +1 to future morale checks. These can also stack. I don't think that one, I don't think these guys do, but the R's I think do. Wait, the DRMs for M and D are cumulative. No. So I will not be able to attack for the rest of the game. To me, that's just a surrender if I get that. Like, of course it's done by nation. If Austria gets it, it's probably less of a big deal, but, that takes away any chance of taking Russia out. If I do, I need those Austrian units there. Anyhow, that's to give you kind of a feeling of how hopeless it feels right now. Now, I can't really judge the balance situation because of the incredible chaos that was present because of these AD results in the early part of the war. Schlieffen could have done what it needed to do. It could have gotten me Paris and won the game, whatever. But I got knocked so hard back by, eventually you're going to get hit by that 20%, no matter what. And it is going to hurt a lot if you're trying to conduct any kind of, offense or defense, to be honest. Anyway, quickie to just delay a little bit longer. I kind of know once I get out of the house, I will be okay. Yes, I'll stress, but I don't think I turn around. I don't think anything horrible, happens or whatever. It's just like the actual act of getting in motion is so fucking hard. Well, here it is, Wednesday, around 3 in the morning. I ended up going to get what I, decided I absolutely needed to done. And, a couple hours walk. I didn't do the small shopping. I said to myself, fuck. The only things I would probably get is a gallon of milk, which is a pain in the ass to carry in a backpack, and some spinach. And yeah, maybe a treat or something, but whatever. What I really need to do is go my big shopping, because I'm running out of ham, which is kind of important to me for whatever reason, and the doggies that I get. So I'm like, there's no real reason for me to try to extend, and milk is not that important. It's really kind of a luxury. The spinach, I haven't been eating the way I used to. So that also, although, it would stretch out because it would be an extra meal a day off of that instead of whatever I eat now. It seems to be peanut butter and crackers for some reason. But anyway, I get home, it's like 3:30, and I'm tired because I'm not used to walking and doing stuff or anything anymore. And so I take a walk, or I decide to take a nap. I get up, it's dark out, around 6 or so. I'm up for about a half hour fucking around on my video game. Go back to sleep. It's like 3:30 now. Now, I didn't just wake up. Again, I was awake for, maybe 45 more minutes. But call it like a little more than an hour or whatever that I've been awake outside of that nap. extended nap. I slept for like 11 hours. I was not intending that to be my major sleep. And part of the problem with that is today is the last day that I can go big shopping until who knows, because it's going to be raining for a while. And tomorrow's not a particularly attractive looking day. It's going to be very cloudy and everything. Today was beautiful. Anyway, I'm just throwing that out there. I got the big thing that I absolutely felt like I had to get done. Probably failed at it again, because the Social Security I put down that my brother gave me for my dad, and I double checked with him, is not the one that I recognize off the death certificate that I wrote down. So I don't know, but I didn't have a copy of the death certificate anymore. Anyhow, I do believe that we are on an absolutely new turn, despite, see, I try to mark where I am with the tweezers and the die, and that kind of indicates it's an Entente turn. But the Entente just got flung back ugly like, and the Central Powers have not gotten a chance to respond to that. So I'm pretty sure it's the Central Powers turn. We do have to check weather. Hey, if I'm on chattering and babbling, let's get some of the game played, huh? I don't know what month it is. November. We're getting into the ugly months. All right, so it clears up in the west. Fairly aggressive turn by the Central Powers. First of all, I replaced this weaker unit. This isn't really a garrison, but I just need something to stop the Montenegrins, and I could actually use breakdown for this probably. A couple of divisions, or a single division would work fine, but I don't have a place for the second division, so whatever. I could spread out and make the defense a little bit more appropriate, but the Montenegrins aren't a risk. Here, fighting again over this hex, but I brought the siege artillery up. I have an attack against Warsaw, supposedly. I don't know. I may have to fiddle with the odds. I may look at the odds and say, oops. I tried to find an attack here, but I couldn't quite come to it. But I am throwing additional forces. Like, this was what happened last turn. I put some additional forces in there. I'm just hoping to push forward. I didn't even calculate anywhere else, you know. I look for a hex that maybe might work. Reinforcing here, the French had an opportunity to break out here, but the risks were too high. It wasn't worth, you know, losing the entire force, essentially, for nothing. Limited increase on the Italian front. But the biggie, I'm attacking this hex. There are disordered Brits in there. And that makes it an easier hex to attack. But it does mean spreading my line out, trying to punch forward. But there's some possibility here. If this deforms badly enough, if it goes well for the Central Powers, and they have to take big risks, I think, right now, as much as they can. If this goes badly enough for the Entente, they might have to withdraw, or even worse, they might end up cut off, and there's no way they can sea supply all those corps. So there's definitely, you know, an opening. I don't expect anything to come of it. Actually, what I expect to happen is the Germans to be so weak here that they're just really allowing the Entente yet another place to attack them, gain ground back. Getting flung back wasn't that terrible a thing, but what if those dice go bad? What if the Entente is flung back again? One thing the highly volatile combat system makes, there is some potential for extreme gains. It's just you're much more likely to suffer extreme losses, and by which I mean losses of land, not just manpower. I don't mind so much when manpower grinds down, right? It gets over the top in La Grande Guerre and Balance of Power, but it feels wrong that like you can kind of chuck the dice at any time in this game and have some chance of a not too massive a breakthrough on the offense, but a massive, massive breakthrough on the defense, where the enemy just reels back in all directions because they're trying to get to good odds. And even with the 3-1 odds or whatever, there's some chance that they just get flung back. Jumping back to the personal stuff before I roll these attacks, because I want to delay anything I can in this game. You know, the reason I slept so much, I can't figure out anything I want to do. You know, nothing is appealing to me. This certainly isn't all that exciting, and if I'm at all tired, I'm like, oh, fuck it, I'll do something else. The book I'm reading, it's nonfiction, and it's boring so far. It's just not really enticing me. So I slip away into sleep to get away from that. Or I just don't even consider it, to be honest. It's sort of become my, okay, while I'm in the tub, I read it. Now that the tub's up here, it makes it even harder to convince myself to go grab a book to read down in the living room. And then, on the computer, you know, I'm even having trouble with enjoying my whatever the fuck I'm playing is like a mobile type. It's a mobile game, but it's like I play it on my computer. But the RAID replacement that I'm using, the second one since then, that I'm just like, it's just not. It's just busy work, you know. That's what it's there for, and sometimes it forces me into wanting to play. Right now, I can't even get the daily stuff that I kind of should do in it done. I just don't want to. And then, you know, other stuff like chatbots and stuff, they're just not hooking me right now. Like, I tried again, but yeah. So it's like, okay, well, there's sleep. Especially once it gets dark. See, that's the thing. When I got home, I was tired. I wanted a nap. I had been up for quite a long time, you know, a good 12 hours, whatever. Had gone out, done a decent walk, nothing tremendous. And I'm like, yeah, nap. You know, a nap sounded like the best thing I could do. Well, then I wake up and it's dark out, and it's like, yeah, well, there isn't something else. I can't go out for another walk. And it just puts me, I don't know, much as I tend to have trouble falling asleep when it's dark out, sometimes it's just an excuse. At this attack here, I'm at like 29 to, I don't remember what it was, 8. Not a great numbering. You know, I can get 3-1 on it, but I'm awfully close to 4-1. But I just, with the mud and stuff, I didn't have the movement points. I would have to pull something off the line somewhere else. These guys just moved up there. I just don't have something to pull off the line. Problems is when you're attacking from only a couple of hexes instead of 3 hexes, when things are very mobile, it's hard to pull the unit to gain the ground. Do I even want to? I don't know. Anyway, we got an advance there. I'll keep working my way through. I was only able to get a 2-1 against this shit. And take your chances, lose your shit. Whee! Now, I could have kept some units up near Warsaw if I figured out which units needed to attack. I know I had more than 2-1. I had like 40 strength points. I don't know how many I needed. I just fucking hate. I needed 36 so I could keep like 1 unit up there, maybe entrenched. I don't know if it does me a hell of a lot of good, but this creates a huge gap that the Russians can move into, and they can actually strengthen their line by expanding it to here and kind of shorten it and whatnot. Maybe not shorten it, but not lengthen it and increase some territory. So this is a big advantage for the Russians. I just couldn't get to the 3-1 because of the mud and whatever, and I feel like I'm under the gun and have to do things with the Central Powers. which is where we go here. I can't remember what I had. I think I just counted 36 here. I have 13 and a half here, but I have to recount. This is the problem with these factor counting games. If there's just too much going on in them, I just can't remember it. I have to keep refiguring the odds. I guess I could use pen and paper, but it feels like something wrong when it's a simple little factor counting game. Like pen and paper makes sense in these more complex things, like like Empires in Arms, where you have to, keep calculating the percentages on the firepower and stuff like that. And there's multiple rounds. You do have to track what's going on. But here it's just one roll. But I count and I forget. I count one side, I forget as I'm counting the other side. We're seeing total collapse of Central Powers here. These guys were flung back too. Again, in a 2-to-1 attack, this time with no minus. Warsaw was bad because, yeah, I can get rid of the fort, but I can't get rid of the city penalty, so 2-to-1 is not great there. But I'm just like, I gotta do something. And what I'm managing to do is watch the Central Powers, watch Germany in particular, just flung back and losing ground. And, the rules that I set for myself, don't make 2-to-1 attacks. 3-to-1 are better, and 3-to-1 is risky, but it's it's at risk of causing these flingbacks, which are completely ahistorical feeling. But you know what? You can't reach 4-to-1 in general, so don't even bother. But if you can get 3 hexes against 1 hex of the enemy, you can get 3-to-1. The Germans have an easier time because they have stronger units for now. Very shortly, they're not going to, but until the Strasstruppen come. But yeah, so that's going to put it onto the Entente turn. I have to flip these DTSs over to Ds. I don't know why. Sort of the only reason that this happens is just because you do flip out, you do your rallies at the end of the turn, but as a shortcut, just put these in. Anyway, I'm disgusted again as usual with this game when I play it. The cost for those bad risks. The Russians are going to launch an attack here and here. Again, trying to pinch off the enemy, as always, because there's big advantages to that. I chose not to advance here. That would weaken my line too much. I needed to strengthen things, move units around. But I am pushing reserves up into there in case we get another opportunity or we get to push further this way. This is putting the Germans... I mean, their line isn't really getting tighter, but this is going to be ugly if that falls. This basically doesn't matter. It's a hex we keep fighting over but it just doesn't matter. It's like whoever gets it is going to lose it the next turn. It's a little more complicated. However, it is good weather. That means I can bring 3 of these into play. Because actually I can't. I can land and I can ship up and that's it. Yeah, I can't bring Brits right into the line. And that's a problem because the British forces still are demoralized. And I think that means the French are going to have to take more of the line right now to absorb into these spaces. And we're not going to be able to gain ground, particularly. At least that's my view of it. It's just such a chaotic mess, so many pieces, so many factor countings. I just don't want to do it. So, because I'm probably not going to find anything. Fight a little bit. Those demoralized units can move up and take the front line there, as long as they don't attack. There's no risk to putting them up there. They recover, and they're my best units, so fuck it. They're up. These guys still couldn't cross. We're just going to take care of these front attacks. And the Russians, unable to advance here, they got an exchange. They just didn't have the troops to take the hex. Again, that hex is not of a great deal of importance. We're causing some attritional losses. We figure that's for the best. For the most part, the Entente is in okay shape. The Russians are iffy, but it does feel like overall, if we can keep pressure on the Germans, that helps, even if we can't find attacks over here on the west, where we really need to start draining them and making them lose units at a reasonable rate, make them so that they can't rebuild their army is what it comes to. Here, though, we got something interesting. We got a DD, which puts these guys over to DTS. Now, they're problematic. After the German turn, they're still going to be demoralized, which is a real issue. And we pushed into that hex. We're looking, again, at that kind of pincer movement. Couldn't find anything here because it's the West Front, and it's just not worth looking at. Oh, boy, I got a bunch of French I got to shift somewhere. Let me do that, too. Okay, so the weather worsened everywhere. We got winter and mud. We got some allies coming in, more replacement pieces. Just shit that I can keep throwing in. And yeah, it's kind of hard to tell because I don't feel like much, like a lot happened on the German turn, on the Central Powers turn where they got flung back. But I really don't feel like the Entente was able to take that much advantage of it. They've returned their border here. Yes, the Russians have tightened things here. But you have to have a couple of those failures for it to really start telling. It's just, it's obvious the Central Powers aren't going to gain ground. Pretty much a turn where I chose to do just about nothing. I don't know what the fuck to do with this guy. Okay. And try to recover. Problem is, I got demoralized. I pumped as much as I could into East Prussia to defend it, into the Warsaw line. I obviously got, hosed by my attacks there. Just not seeing any hope here. It's just going to be, what we're going to do is at the end of this turn, we get the first of the demoralization, the national will checks. And, oh, look, I didn't move these guys. How clever. I think I did, actually. I don't know. Anyway, because he's not in a, he's not in a city, so he must have railed down there to get into position. And just, hope for the best there, that that changes something, because nothing is going to change on the front lines, and it's not worth attacking. After the defeats that we took, we need to try to recover. It might be possible for the Russians to do something, but see, the two hexes that are really dangerous for the Germans, first of all, reinforcements got into them, they'll ooze out, but also, I only have one unit, one hex that I can attack those from. So that's not likely to do much. I guess we'll go to the Entente side. I don't feel like doing 2 turns, even though this was a relatively easy one. I just can't do both sides on one sitting. Lovely foggy days. Still early morning. It's supposed to be foggy all day. I know that I'm not gonna drag my cart and do big shopping. Yesterday I made the decision that it didn't make sense to do little shopping. But what I could do is just take, and I've talked about this and done it before, I could just take my small backpack and go to the big shopping place and get a couple of things that I really do kind of need. It's a thought. It's a thought, because I'm not expecting any, I'm expecting rain into early next week after today. Anyway, we're on the Entente side here. Let's get this turn done. See if anybody has any further collapses or anything. To find any viable attacks, and without any reason to do so. And honestly, it's getting problematic. The French force pool is almost done. Still the Brits. The Russians have a lot to build. But I feel like I'm wasting resources. I need to attack, but I just can't find a place to get a grip. to make, one of those 3-to-1s. And I'm not trying too hard, but, you know, we got just so much density of force. One thing I'm hoping for is, look, the Italian front, eventually I can get French troops down there. And I'm holding the Germans off. And if they want to attack, then that opens them up to the possibility of getting flung back, the counterattack, regaining territory, or gaining territory on them. It's a horrible thing. There are a couple of hexes where there are forts, but which can kind of help in an attack, but they're not really next to each other. So Epinal, which I unfortunately had put a entrenchment on illegally, and Verdun here, if those were closer together, they could combine, sort of like these Germans could combine against this hex if the French had that hex, and make a safer attack at like 2-to-1. There's still the danger here in the Luxembourg space. I was able to make figure out one attack, which is the Russians hitting here, trying to chip away. The Germans didn't have that very well defended. We'll see what happens from that. But that's the only thing. Of course, it is winter, Winter doesn't mean much. It doesn't affect the attacks at all. It doesn't affect the odds or anything. What it affects is the ability to shift forces quickly into a sector to fight, which again, yeah, that's part of the story. But they're also leaving out the part of the story that, like, especially in the mud, it's particularly hard to gain any ground at all. You could also make an argument that winter's a little harsher, but like harsher than normal. But it's the mud that's really bad. It prevents, ammo from getting up to the front and all kind of stuff, as well as making it harder to move across the ground. What winter does is makes it harder to entrench, which I don't know if I've seen any game which really deals with that. At a month-long level, you can still dig a pretty significant trench that way. So I don't know. But anyway, let's get our one attack, and I suspect it's a 3-to-1. And it's a clear defender eliminated, actually, and we're able to pull in. There's a gap there that the Germans aren't going to be able to defend fully, although it's woods, so it's already got a trench defense on it for what that's worth. Plus, there aren't a lot of Russians that can hit it, just one stack. I am a little worried. These CP markers I have, I'm running out of them. They're my next layer of trench markers. There were a shit ton of them. But, trenches everywhere. All right, let's take a look at the war weariness. We have not dealt with this before. National morale. It's kind of funny because to me this is like, okay, it's a rule, it's a whole bunch of stuff, but it's kind of only really of any importance in the one scenario, this grand campaign scenario. It just feels kind of weird that, like, there's stuff from the grand campaign that's almost as big as this, that's in that scenario instead of here. Each country has to check, except the US. Appropriate DRM summarized on table A. Oh, right. I think it's here. Yeah. All right. Well, let's just go down the nations. Although we have this all others, which is kind of problematic. And we have all countries here. Okay. 15 months after country starts rolling. That makes it harder. Each low morale or desertion. We're going to have to keep track of some of this on paper. So Germany. We have lost no major cities. We did not declare war on the Netherlands. We get a 6, we're fine. The Austrians, they have lost a major city. So they're at +1. They're fine. The Ottomans, absolutely ignored. There's not 5 or more corps in here, so we're not penalized by that. There's still some chance. Bulgaria is not in the game. France. We lost a major city. Nope. Italy. Absolutely nothing. Britain. Britain is not facing submarine warfare. This would only happen. Okay. They're fine. Russia. Russia has not lost anything except loads. The link to Russia is not open. Okay. But now, we have other countries, the minors, that haven't been dealt with. Some of the minors are listed in there. Let's think about them. The Axis, or the Central Powers, has the Netherlands. The Netherlands has 2 cities taken, at least. Okay, they get a 10. Reduce infantry RPs by 30%, artillery RPs by 1. This is of no importance, essentially. I could write it down in the event that, like, I start gaining Dutch territory back. Fuck it. Over to the Entente. Belgium. Belgium. Reduce infantry RPs by 10%. I have to write this down. It's gone, but Montenegro exists. They're fine. Okay, so I marked these down. They last for the next 3 months, and then we're going to have another check here in March, but at the end of March, I guess. But that puts us to 1916. I have some stuff to fill out, so I'll drop the replacements there and whatnot that go in. But yeah, you know, no hope for anything significant changing in the game. And, you know, this is just a situation where I think the Central Powers are just completely hosed. Because, you know, I mean, they're also losing territory, which impacts their chance of collapsing and everything. It's all fine. I buy that side of things. It's just like other aspects of the game have felt so unrealistic that, like, these more realistic and believable things like this national morale are, you know, they're snowballing the situation that's already bad, I guess. That's not a whole hell of a lot of stuff. You know, the war effort's wearing down, but there are a lot of counters left, especially German counters, which worries me that I've done something wrong. Some of them are the Strasstruppen. Speaking of which, the Strasstruppen and the tanks. I had a worry of, I gotta pay attention to when those show up. And no, I don't, because they're going to show up as actual counters on here. So it's not something I have to, you know, consider outside of outside of the actual units showing up. But I do have to worry about one thing, which is the entrenchment. January 1916, we can upgrade from level 1 to level 2. Which, you know, that then is a -2 cavalry attack. That makes even the 3-to-1s kind of more dangerous, right? There was already a 20% chance of all hell breaking loose on a 3-to-1. No, I'm sorry. There was already a 10% chance. Now it could be worse. AXs maybe aren't as bad because you don't get flung back. It would be horrible. Like, it wouldn't make a big deal to the Entente. They have so many excess units built up. The Central Powers feels like they're kind of running at the edge because I'm not able to get all my stuff on the board, but that's okay. I don't know. I'm debating whether or not to load this up. One thing I haven't done is I haven't started sorting the next game. I read the rules to it. I'm worried that this is just going to kind of collapse all at once to the point where I have to quit. But sorting, takes a day or two, right? Even for something big. All right. Back to another turn, and we're at mud everywhere this time in January. I don't know why, but I'm in the mood to be doing this. Maybe because it helps me avoid going shopping, but there are other ways I could avoid. So I don't know. Time for weird withdrawals. So here we are in January of 16. I've got to withdraw 3 6-8-4s from Germany. I already dropped what the Austrians are getting. 3 6-8-4s, so these are just gone. It's okay. I don't get any RPs back, but I would rather not be pulling units from the line and rebuilding them. That's just not advantageous. Next turn, we're going to have withdrawals as well. I get one of my CP markers back. Yay. I started using unsupplied markers because for this, because things are almost never unsupplied. Oh, we'll see. I could use allied markers, but I want to keep something with the coloration there. But also the Austrians here in January 16. I added the 3-5 through 5s, but I got to withdraw 3 4-6-3s, and then my 5-7-4s get replaced with 4-6-3s when they're eliminated. I don't know. I don't have a shit ton of 4-6-3s, but there also aren't a lot of 5-7-4s. So what am I doing here? I'm withdrawing 3 of my 4-6-3s. Unfortunately, I don't have any of them in the field, so that's going to be 12 RPs extra. I'm going to have trouble building all the Austrian units this turn, actually, because, well, we'll see. There's going to be a lot of RPs for Austria. I have more enhanced impact of the blockade that I have to remember. The Germans are down to -2 infantry RP, and the Austrians at -1 per turn. They still have a lot of points, but, well, I don't know, their force pools are... their force pools are getting taxed now, actually, because it's hard to cover all this ground, even if they could build everything. I think I'm going to have to start pulling units off the West Front and hope for the best. Maybe that'll coax the Entente to make attacks at 3-1s or whatever, and eventually I'll win those attacks because they get DDs and get flung back. I don't know. Attention to the German withdrawal. So it's January of 16 I have a withdrawal. I don't have my next withdrawal until April. So it might be worth building this 6-8-4 here. Again, shifting them out is a pain in the ass, but they're so good that if I have any attacks to make, they're not really that impressive on defense. It's on the offense. Being able to go from that, 5, which is the best unit I have, up to 6 doesn't seem like much, but 4 to 6 starts making a difference, and I have a fair amount of points. However, on the other hand, I may not have anywhere I want to attack. Kind of laughable factor about, how this game does not comport with other games at all, but also doesn't reflect the reality. My force pools are all out there now for the Germans and Austrians. They have all their forces on the board. Because we're not fighting. Because the game makes it absolutely clear that any attacks that you make are just too dangerous in terms of losing ground. It's not the casualties. I play plenty of these games where, the meat grinder is in effect. This one, it is not. This one, it's like, you don't want to attack because you don't want to lose territory. Which is sort of the opposite. Like, the attacks were made with the hope of gaining territory and with the attritional concepts in play. Well, the attrition doesn't make sense because you can't risk it. You can't risk the fighting. Anyway, let me see if I can position any units anywhere that does me any goddamn good at all. I tried pretty hard, but I couldn't find any attacks that I could make with the central power. So instead, I went for a stabilizing type operation, building up the line here. This is awfully weak. Probably gonna lose it, but what can we do? That will mean pulling back if I do lose this hex. But maybe the Russians fall back, on a bad roll or whatever. Over here, I threw a bunch of troops in against the Hamburg thing. I don't have any more room in the line here. I don't want to commit them to the east. Because of the mud, some of the units wouldn't have even been able to join. Honestly, let's leave these guys back here so that I can rail them somewhere else if need be. But yeah, my hope is I'm not too far from the 3-1 on this. To bust him out of there, get my point back each turn. Although it may not matter if we never fight. And that'll put me to the Entente turn, I guess. Don't want to go shopping. It's afternoon and I'm like, yeah, it's still foggy. I know it's going to be rainy for a while. Not Friday, but I'm pretty sure I won't go Friday. Like, it's not like I want to do anything at home particularly. It's not like the walk wouldn't be a nice idea. I don't know. Anyway, let's get to the Entente turn this January. Painful. Replace the 574 Infantry Corps, 2 of them. Not all of them. Or maybe they are all of them, I don't know. With these 463s, I gotta hunt the proper units through the whole pile. I know I don't have them over there. Geez, I realized I did not dig in with all of those Central Powers units. Almost everything should be dug in, but there are probably some exceptions where it's like some things that are ones should still be ones because they just dug in their first level. I don't know. It's such an annoying mechanism here. These trenches with, they just should be on the back of the fucking counters, and just have trenches go up to level 2. Because honestly, in a month's time, you can probably dig in as much as you can dig in. Already stretched, right? The trench counter mix is already stretched further than it should be. And I just found a stack where we're going to end up having a level 2 trench and a level 1 trench in the same space at the end of it. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. Why am I playing this? Why am I playing this? It's just, I don't think much is going to happen that's going to be particularly exciting anymore. It's just going to be the slow decline of the Central Powers. But, hey, the Russians are losing some of their offensive capability here. There's nothing in the game that forces the Russians into a collapse, except that historically they lost a lot of cities. And, well, maybe not all that many, although some of their little towns count as well. But it's not going to happen here. You're not going to be able to count on that. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. If the Russian army wasn't failing to hold the Central Powers back, maybe the collapse wouldn't have come. Get to use some of the French counter mix as well, because January 16th we withdraw 3 of their 574 infantry. This is their best infantry. Like the Germans, they're going to lose their top units. And again, it's just going to create lots of replacement points, but replacement points that I can't do much with. This siege artillery is going to cost almost all of my artillery points. It would cost what I have banked. But that is a really helpful little piece, because that allows me to start hitting the forts. But the forts are becoming obsolete at this point, because level 2 entrenchments and whatnot. But I honestly just don't think I can keep going. I don't know if it's worth hunting these pieces down. My will for this is just so limited. I kind of want to see tanks and airplanes and all that coming in and how they operate, but it's going to take a while for all of that to come in, and I honestly don't think it's going to do much. Let's take a look. Airplanes just add strength, which, you know, we need, but let's take a look at... So through the base rules, it's just a DRM, +1 DRM to an attack for each Strasstroop, and that's pretty big, up to +3. That's huge, actually. Tanks, same thing. Straßtruppen have a better capability under the optional rules here. Let's see what they do. Attacking artillery units may neutralize defending artillery units. That takes them out of the defensive equation entirely. That's a big move. I don't know what this note is about. I guess it just means, I don't know. Because I can only neutralize one artillery unit anyway with the attacking artillery units. Well, there might be 2 in a defensive hex, but only if the hex is poorly defended by real troops. I guess they give you heavier defense, the siege artillery, because you can stack an additional siege artillery. But anyway, if you eliminate a defending unit, the defense line is ruptured and all defenders have to retreat. That can get us some ground. Yeah, I almost feel like I have to play to see that happening. It's just, I don't want to get there. Like, I really don't know how I'm going to cope with these damn entrenchments. There's just, you know, without breaking out another counter set or something, and I really don't know if I want to. I'm going to walk away for a while and consider whether I'm quitting. Oh, it's like 3:30 now, and the fog is finally burning away. It just was too cold, I guess, to get rid of it or something. I don't know. Anyway, I'm back up here, back with that same conundrum. We're looking at the January 16th, withdrawing the 3574s. Okay, I guess I'll just go on. I'm upset about the, I don't know what I'm going to do about the level 2, because I just don't have the pieces for it. Yeah, I'm quitting. Fuck it. It's just not worth it. All right. So, I mean, yes, there's part of the game we didn't get to see. I would have liked to have seen the Straßtruppen optional rule in play. how much that could gain. But, honestly, not a hell of a lot, I think, because the Central Powers is going to be so weakened by the time it comes about. It's hard. I've said before, it's hard to judge what the balance of this thing is, because it feels like the situation when it gelled was based on the highly volatile combat that happened during during the mobile stage of the game. Everything is way too volatile in this system if you're accepting to take the risks. And if you don't accept to take the risks, you're not going to get the level of combat that happened in World War I. So it's just this incredibly unrealistic or ahistorical representation, which can give you semi-historical results of like the freezing, not a lot of movement or something, just because nobody's willing to attack. But yeah, I'm sticking with my judgment before that this is the absolute worst World War I game that I've played so far, of the strategic games. And I just don't see going on with it when I'm going to have to face, not enough of these counters to be able to handle the level 2 entrenchments. I knew it was a waiting problem, and I just, it's like, yeah, the game doesn't come with enough counters to support what it's doing. And worse, it's going to mean multiple trench counters per hex in at least a small amount of cases. And, nothing's happening here. So these will pretty much stagnate where they are, although I may end up tearing up fortresses because they're not worth having anymore. They're just a penalty, really. But when we come over here, I'm constantly shifting Russian troops around, and Germans too, in part because maybe I can find an attack somewhere, or things are a little bit more active than they are in the West. But also, for the Russians, as long as Warsaw has its rail line coming out, and it's this, actually I'm not sure they do anymore. Fuck. It's hard to keep track of because it looks like I have a good rail line, but now the Germans are up against it, and now troops are up against this one, so I actually should not be giving the Russians as many points as that they had. Certainly for this last turn that I haven't done anything. But the Russians have been building troops here. Now they wouldn't actually be able to either, and funneling them out slowly, and that just means that I shift a troop everywhere. Well, that's going to create a stack of level or a string of level 1 entrenchments in some places on top of level 2 entrenchments. It's just there's just the game is not mechanically, like the mechanical and components aspects of the game are untenable. The amount of fiddling around you have to do within stacks, especially where something's this dense, but along with the fact that there just aren't enough components to cover it, and that it was a horrible decision to put the entrenchments as separate counters when there's no reason not to have at least the level 1 entrenchments or something. I mean, the highest level entrenchments, whatever. It's not like the Great War where they have different values for the units or anything based on the level of entrenchment. So it's just a general factor in play. It would have been interesting to see the end of the war. If I was really excited, I might try to set up the 1918 scenario, but I have the feeling that I'm going to run into this same problem with the entrenchments if I'm playing that scenario right off the bat. Uh, the original Guns of August had boxes that you put units in that I guess kind of indicated the trench value or something. Who knows? But and again, those were single-sided counters. When double-sided counters with an entrenched side and a non-entrenched side would make great sense. Not gonna deal with flipped over counters and trying to cope with that. I'm just not going to continue. I think the game as written is unplayable beyond beyond this year, where we got through a year and a half, and it has become unplayable because of components, and it wasn't very good before that. Like, it was difficult to play, and ahistorical as fucking shit.